Hey! Thanks for joining me back here at Laser Engraving 911. So one of the things you might not know about me is that I actually love to fish. And when I'm not in the shop laser engraving and I'm not making these videos and I got a little bit of free time on my hands, I like to get out to that lake and do some bass fishing. And one of the things I always wanted to do was make my own lures. And I thought, well, hey, I've got these cool machines here. I bet you I could make a fishing lure using my laser engraver. So that's exactly what we're going to do today. And not only that, but we're going to take it out to the lake and see if we can actually catch a fish with it. So if that sounds like something you want to get into, then stick around on Laser Engraving 911. Alright, here is our supplies. So the material that we're going to use to laser cut and laser engrave the fishing lure is this 1/4-inch basswood. And these are the other little components that we're going to be embedding in the lure as we move along. So I will make sure that I, as always, put links in the description below this video of where you can get all these little various components, and we're just going to go over them real quick. So we've got a actual lipless crankbait here that we're going to use as kind of a guide to where we should put the screws and all the little hardware after we're done making our lure. We've got some treble hooks. These are number 6. We've got some a little 4-gram weight plugs here, and I'll explain where we're going to put that in. This is a little bit of weight that we're going to put in the front of the lure to help keep it kind of up and down and kind of front load it. We've got some little split rings here. We've got some fishy eyeballs. I don't know if I already said that. We've got some fishy eyeballs, a little pair of tweezers to put the fishy eyeballs in. We've got a drill bit, and this is a 5/16 inch drill bit that we're going to use to put a hole in the bottom of the lure. We've got the split ring tool, and we've got some closed eye screws that we're going to use to embed inside the lure. And of course some super glue. No project's complete without some super glue. And that's basically it for the first part, and then we'll get into the finishing parts that we're going to need to actually finish the lure. So now I think what we're going to do is we're going to go over to the computer and we're going to design the files for our fishing lure. Alright, so here we have a nice little fishy graphic that I pulled from the internet, and I'll show you why we have that here. We have these two files right here, and let me explain what's going on here. Is we have the basic shape. This inner black line is the size that I want my lure to be in the end. This black line here will be in this inner part will be engraved, and I'll explain that. And this black line shape here will also be engraved. And the reason for that is we're going to sandwich this and this together when we're done cutting it and glue it together, and we'll have a nice shaft running through the back here for the eyelet screw that we're going to be putting in the back there, that's going to hold the treble hook. And then we're going to put that other belly weight about right here somewhere, but we're going to drill a hole with the drill press for that. So we're going to engrave these black parts, and then the laser is going to go ahead and cut this contour line right here, which is about 0.15 inches wider than I want my lure to be, and that's to leave me some extra room to work with on the grinder when I'm actually creating a shape based off of the two parts that I put together. I'll be grinding this all the way. So all this space in between the black and the red, I'm going to be grinding away. So when I want to grab something like this. Obviously I'm not going to try to engrave this. This wouldn't work if I tried to engrave this over my lure. But this is the shape, the exact shape of my lure profile on one side. So what I've done is I've filled it with gray and then put the opacity right here down to 50%. I make sure that I go Object, Arrange, Bring to Front, so it's in the front. And look, I hover over the shape that I want to cut out like a cookie cutter. Okay, this is like a cookie cutter trick. So I get it right where I want it, where I, the part of this graphic that I want to grab. And then I select both of the objects and I go to Object, Clipping Mask, Make. And there it is. And then I go over here to the Pathfinder tool and hit the Merge button. And I've got my vector graphic now ready to go, ready to engrave on my one side of my lure. So that's how I prepared these files. Let's go ahead and go over to the laser and cut these rough parts out and go to the next step. Alright, so here's our two parts that we just laser cut out of that basswood. It's funny, it's called basswood. We're making a bass lure. I just realized that. Anyway, so you can see that we've got our channels here, and the way this is going to work is I'm going to take my little eyelet and I'm going to set it in the channel, and then I'm going to take the other half, the opposite half, and I'm going to put some epoxy in here, and I'm going to epoxy that. And this wood is very light, by the way. It's not quite balsa wood, but it's not like a denser wood either. It's very lightweight. So I'm going to sandwich those two together after I put some epoxy, some Gorilla Glue in there, and then I'm going to clamp them down, and we're going to let that set, and then we're going to go ahead and grind away at least this much material around the edge, and then I'm going to use the belt grinder to start shaping the rough shape of my lure. So let's go ahead and do that. Alright, so as you can see, I've got steady pressure pressing the two halves together, and I've got it resting on a little silicone mat, so if any epoxy drips off, it won't stick to the table or whatever. Even if there's drips along the edge, it really doesn't matter because we're going to grind all that away anyway. Alright, now we've got our basic shape milled down with the sander. We're going to go ahead and use the Epilog Edge that I have, 20 with the camera system. And you can see I've loaded up the graphic into the camera system, sent it over to the laser, and you can see that the camera has taken a nice shot of the lure inside there. And I've got my graphic imported that you just saw from CorelDRAW, and I sent it over to the machine, and before we hit go on the laser, I'm able to line up the graphic perfectly right over the lure, the basic lure shape that we just sanded down, and just kind of tweak it until I get it just right. That's one of the benefits of the Epilog Edge iris camera system, is if you place your objects directly in the middle of the bed, which is best for doing detailed lineup like this, you can easily place any graphic over a strangely shaped object and get it all lined up. Now you'll notice there's a little bit of material hanging out underneath the engraving, but that's okay because we'll go back and trim that back so it kind of fits, only the engraving part is showing. So I'm just going to go ahead and select my settings here for this particular wood that I like to use, and we're going to engrave this pattern on and see how it goes. right, so after I got the final sanding done, I went ahead and found the right drill bit that was the right size of that little 4-gram belly weight that I need to put in the bottom there. So I went ahead and drilled that hole out. So now that I've trimmed that weight to 2 grams, I'm going to go ahead and I fit it to size. I'm going to go ahead and pull it out real quick. I'm going to add some super glue in there. I'm going to go ahead and set this in there. Give it a little tappy tap. Get in there. I'm going to put some super glue on the top and a little bit of baking soda, which I guess is like reacts with the super glue. Doop 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 doop. So hopefully that'll, I guess the super glue is soaking that up, and then we'll go put the other screws in. There's actually a guy on YouTube that inspired me a year ago, and it got me thinking, man, I wonder if I could make that bait with my laser engraver. He's got a YouTube channel, Marling Baits. If you're watching this, buddy, you're my inspiration. I love watching you make your lures, man. And he carves all of his designs by hand and cuts all of his wood out by hand, and it's really impressive to watch. Definitely, if you want to check out his channel and you'll want to see more of this kind of stuff, minus the lasers, go check his channel out. It's pretty cool. And he fishes with his lures too, which is super cool. Just like we're gonna do. Get a little. Ooh, look at that. You didn't know I also did mini tools. I got jokes, folks. Alright, so before we get to painting this with all our pretty colors, we want to put on a base coat. That way the colors are more vibrant on there. And what I like to do is I just use some old Rust-Oleum primer, flat white. And I'm just going to put a real kind of light coat on top of our lure as it is. Here's what it looks like right now. We've got our both sides engraved. We put some hardware in there. And we're just going to put a little, we're going to put a little base coat on there so our colors pop more when we go over to the airbrush. 1 foot away. Just kind of always moving. I don't care if I get a little bit on the hardware there. Try not to get any drips. And just kind of get it evenly coated. Just like to put that little white base coat on there before I add all the color. And then we'll go over and show you this cool airbrush I got. All right, so we got our little primer coat on our lure here. And now what we're going to do is we're going to venture into the world of airbrushing. And I'm going to just say a disclaimer right now. I am not a airbrush expert. This little toy that I got, I don't know if it's a toy, it's pretty much a toy, but I got it because I wanted to learn a little bit more about airbrushing and how to kind of use airbrushing to paint my fishing lures once I made them, because I see a lot of people on YouTube, that's how they're doing it, and it looked pretty fun. But I didn't want to get a compressor, and I didn't want to get all the hoses and spend too much money on it. So what I found was this self-contained battery operated airbrush, which has a little pneumatic pump in here. And it, for what I'm doing, it does a really good job. It doesn't have like super fine control, and it's definitely by no means a professional airbrush, but man, talk about no hoses, no compressors, none of that, no air dryers. This thing works really good, and I'm gonna use it right now to put some color on our awesome fishing lure that we're making. So I'll leave a a link in the description of where I got this. You can check it out, as well as all these other airbrushing paints that I'm using. It is important that you do use paints that were designed for airbrushing, and using a reducer, paint reducer that is compatible with your paints is kind of key. You want to make sure that the paint is thin enough to feed through the airbrush. Without further ado, I'm just going to shoot myself putting some color on this fishing lure and speed up the video and let you guys kind of watch that, and then we'll get on to the final epoxy coating part, which is pretty fun to do as well. Oh yeah, and there's of course the final step before we throw the epoxy coating on, of throwing on some juicy eyeballs that hopefully bass will be intrigued by. So you can get all these little fake lure eyeballs off Amazon. I'll list a link down below, but there are lots of different shapes and sizes. I just felt like these red eyeballs would look good on there, and that's what we're going to go with. All right, now for the epoxy coating. So what I've got here is, this is my makeshift lure turner setup, because I probably only make like one lure a year just for fun. So what I have is, I have one of those cup turner mechanisms that you can get off Amazon. I have my little pliers taped to the end of the rod, and then I use some of my blue tape. And then I have my fishing lure that I just finished painting clipped to the end of it. And when I turn this on and I start putting on this two-part epoxy, it's going to slowly rotate the lure as it's drying, and any drips are going to go onto the silicone mat. So I'll get a nice, even, non-puddle, drippy coating all over my lure. So the downside of this, because I'd really like to just coat this really quick and go fishing right away, is I'm going to have to let it do this overnight after I put the epoxy on. So let's go ahead and mix up the two-part epoxy, and then we'll brush a nice even coat on it and just let this rotate overnight, and then we'll come back and check it out tomorrow. I figured that before we take it out fishing, you'd want to take a closer look at the final product. So this is what we just made after it had the epoxy coating on it. I think it came out pretty cool. I'm very happy with it. I am by no means a master lure maker, but I think for the purpose of this video and how to make a fishing lure with your lasers, this came out pretty cool. I'm pretty happy with it. You can see tons of things I could have improved on, and just my grinding and everything, but in the end, man, I'm really happy with the way this came out. And it's got the little weight in the front, so it should tip it forward when it's getting pulled through the water. I thought you'd want to take a look at some of the other cool stuff that I've made with the laser. And I think all we got to do now is go put some hardware on this. I'm going to drill these little epoxy, kind of got over these little holes. I'm just going to use a fine drill bit to drill those out, and then put some hardware on and take it over to the lake and see what we can catch.
All right, let's get our gear out. See if we can try our luck on the lake. Ooh, looking a little dirty today. Just had a big rain. That's not gonna stop me though. Give a shout out to my buddy Jay, who lives on this lake, who lets me come over and fish pretty much anytime I want, which is super nice. We're gonna come out here on this dock and we are gonna try our new lure. Let's get this old worm off. I ain't using no worms today. Today we're using the Laser Engraving bait 6000. I haven't got a name for this thing yet. I'm just gonna drop a Palomar knot on this guy. One of my favorite knots to tie. All right, ready to fish. Let's do it. First cast, here we go.
It was at this moment that he knew. He f***ed up.
Well, Houston, I think we have a problem. I ran into a problem, but for those of you that know about fishing lures, there's fishing lures that are supposed to sink, there's fishing lures that are supposed to float on the top of the water, and this one is supposed to be one of the ones that sinks so I can reel it in underwater. But as you can see, all it does is float. And clearly I have forgotten one important step in making this lure, which is weight and buoyancy. I thought that adding the weight that I added would be enough to get it to sink, and it is not. When it hits the water, it's called a lipless crankbait. It's supposed to sink, and right now when I reel it in, it just does that on the top of the water, which is not what I was hoping for. So we've got to go and figure out how to add more weight to my pretty lure that I made so it will do what I need it to do in the water, because I don't think it's going to catch any fish working like this. So back to the drawing board. So here's my plan. This lure is too buoyant and it floats on top, so I need to add more weight to it. And what I did was I took these split shots. I'm just telling you how I figured this out, because I'm not smart enough to do all the math and specific volume and water displacement and all that stuff. So what I did was took these split shots and I clipped them to the hooks one at a time, and then floated this in a 5-gallon bucket of water. And I kept adding split shots, just temporarily clipped to the hook, until I saw this sink and drop at a rate that I wanted to sink at. And what I came up with was basically I need to add 7 grams. But there's no way I can add these to this lure. But what I can do is I have this other weight that's called a drop shot weight, and it just happens to be 7 grams. So I kind of lucked out there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in I'm going to put this in a vise, put this in my drill press, find out what diameter this is, and I'm going to drill a hole for this weight, like a plug, and then I'm going to put this weight right in the middle there, just like that, and I'm going to sink it a little bit past the surface, and then I'm going to fill in the top of where it is. I'll probably make it a little bit deep, and then I'm going to fill it with epoxy, let it dry and cover it up, and then we're going to go fishing with it again, and it should sink and do what I need it to do. So wish me luck. Now I just got to do a little cover up job, some epoxy, and we'll get them swimming right. Lesson learned, but that's what this is all about. We're just learning and we're figuring out what needs to be done, and I learned a very valuable lesson today on getting the weight of your lure correct depending on what you want it to do. So let's go ahead and suture this back up. Might do a little touch-up paint job, a little epoxy over there, glue that in there, and then we'll take it back out to the lake and try to catch a fish. All right, here we go on round 2 with our new improved laser bait 6000. Let's see how she does. Yes! Oh yeah, that's so much better. Now she's sinking, going through the water. I can feel you got some drag, you got a little vibration back and forth. That's what I wanted. All right, here we go. Okay. Well, there's a reason why they call it fishing and not catching. So we didn't catch a fish with our laser lure today, but man, did I have so much fun creating this thing, and I learned a lot. It's really important to me that I share not only my successes with you, but also my failures and how I overcome them. So yeah, did we make a few mistakes along the way with the weight and everything? For sure. Did I want to put a hole in the bottom of the lure to add more weight after I was done getting it all purty? No, I didn't want to do that. But hey, you know what? I learned a lot, and on the next lure, I'm going to make sure that I take care of the weight issue way before I do any of the other stuff. So if you got some value out of this video and you like what we did here, please consider liking and subscribing. It really helps me out and it helps support the channel. And once again, you know, thank you to all my subscribers and all of you who watch. It means a lot to me, and I sure did have fun making this. I'm kind of biased because I love fishing, so this was a really fun video for me to make. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you on the next one on Laser Engraving 911.